In the ruthless arena of power, the concept of friendship is often nothing more than a comforting illusion. Human psychology craves connection and trust, but when influence and control become the stakes, genuine alliances grow rare and fragile. Machiavelli understood this stark reality better than most. In the dirty game of power, no one truly stands as your friend. Instead, relationships are transactional, strategic, and driven by self-interest. The mind, wired to seek social bonds for survival, is easily deceived by the veneer of camaraderie. Yet beneath this surface lies an unyielding drive to gain advantage, to protect one's position, and to outmaneuver rivals. This reality forces a psychological reckoning. When you step into a battlefield of influence, whether in politics, business, or social hierarchies, the emotional attachments that often define friendship become liabilities. Trusting others blindly exposes you to betrayal, manipulation, and exploitation. This is not a cynical worldview, but a pragmatic understanding of human nature's duality. People naturally operate with self-preservation as their core motive. The desire to form bonds coexists with an instinct to compete and dominate. Recognizing this duality is the first step to mastering the psychology of power. Machiavelli's insight cuts through the idealism of social narratives that preach unconditional loyalty and eternal friendship. Instead, he reveals the transactional essence of human relations within power structures. Allies are useful for a time. They provide support, resources, and protection. But these alliances dissolve as soon as the balance of power shifts or interests diverge. The friend who once stood beside you may become the most dangerous opponent tomorrow. This volatile nature of relationships means that emotional vulnerability can be exploited as a weapon against you. Those who cling to naive ideas of friendship often find themselves blindsided in the harsh realities of influence. Psychologically, this forces individuals to cultivate a level of detachment. Emotional entanglement clouds judgment and weakens strategic thinking. The mind must learn to differentiate between genuine support and tactical alignment. It becomes critical to see through the social masks people wear, the smiles, the flattery, the promises, to identify the underlying motives. This requires psychological awareness and a willingness to embrace discomfort. The truth is uncomfortable. Human interactions, especially in power games, are rarely pure or altruistic. Instead, they are complex negotiations where self-interest trumps sentiment. Understanding this truth doesn't mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means sharpening your emotional intelligence to recognize manipulation, assess intentions accurately, and respond with calculated discretion. The smartest players in the game of power maintain their guard while engaging socially. They allow just enough closeness to leverage alliances, but keep enough distance to avoid emotional dependency. This psychological balance is a skill, one that transforms social interactions into strategic opportunities rather than vulnerabilities. The myth of friendship as a source of unconditional support must be replaced by a more nuanced psychological model. Power thrives not in the bonds of sentiment, but in the clarity of purpose and self-interest. This shift in mindset is both liberating and empowering. It frees you from the traps of disappointment and betrayal because you no longer expect loyalty where it is rare. Instead, you focus on what truly matters. Understanding human motives, controlling your responses, and playing the game with eyes wide open. In this light, no one is your friend, but that is not a weakness. It is the raw, unvarnished truth of power. And in that truth lies your greatest strength. Trust is one of the most fragile and paradoxical aspects of human psychology. especially within the power arena. Our brains are wired to seek connection and cooperation. It's how societies form and survive. Yet this same wiring also makes us vulnerable to deception, manipulation, and betrayal. The paradox is that while trust is necessary to build any alliance, it is simultaneously the biggest risk a player in the game of power can take. Machiavelli's cold pragmatism exposes this delicate balance, teaching that trust must be earned but never given blindly. Understanding how the mind processes trust and how it can be weaponized is essential to mastering power dynamics. At its core, trust is a psychological gamble. When we trust someone, we temporarily suspend suspicion and open ourselves to influence. This suspension activates brain systems linked to reward and social bonding, releasing chemicals like oxytocin that foster feelings of safety and attachment. Yet those same feelings can be hijacked by Machiavellian actors who use emotional intelligence as a tool for control. They carefully craft a persona of reliability, empathy, or loyalty to lower your defenses. Behind this mask lies a calculated agenda, where trust is merely a means to an end. Cognitive biases also play a crucial role in how we assess trustworthiness and how easily we fall prey to deception. The halo effect leads us to attribute positive traits to someone based on superficial impressions like charm or status, blinding us to warning signs. Confirmation bias makes us favor information that supports our hopes or beliefs about a person, ignoring contradictory evidence. Machiavellian manipulators exploit these mental shortcuts to manipulate perceptions, create illusions of trustworthiness. Recognizing these biases within yourself is a powerful psychological defense. Emotional intelligence, often celebrated as a strength, can be double-edged in power dynamics. While it allows genuine leaders to empathize and connect, it also equips manipulators with the ability to read vulnerabilities and exploit them. They identify what you desire: approval, respect, security, and weaponize those needs to bind you emotionally. The ability to recognize emotional manipulation is crucial. It requires not just intellectual awareness. Deception in power games is not always overt lying. It often comes in subtler forms, withholding information, feigning ignorance, or overstating loyalty. These tactics prey on your assumptions and force you to question your own judgment. Psychologically, this creates cognitive dissonance, a mental discomfort that clouds decision-making and weakens resolve. The best players understand that deception is a normal, inevitable part of power relations. They approach it with a strategic mindset, expecting falsehoods and preparing countermeasures. Ultimately, the psychology of trust and deception teaches one fundamental truth. In the game of power, trust is a currency to be spent wisely, guarded fiercely, and never assumed as a permanent asset. The ability to navigate this psychological minefield separates the vulnerable from the victorious. By sharpening your awareness of cognitive biases, honing emotional regulation, and adopting a pragmatic stance toward human motives, you transform trust from a naive gamble into a calculated strategy. Machiavelli's dirty game demands nothing less if you want to rise, survive, and dominate. To survive and thrive in the dirty game of power, psychological detachment isn't just an advantage, it's a necessity. Emotions, while essential to human experience, often cloud judgment and make individuals vulnerable to manipulation. Machiavelli's timeless wisdom reveals that those who succeed in power are not slaves to their feelings, but masters of them. Detachment here doesn't mean coldness or indifference. It means cultivating an inner distance that allows you to observe without being overwhelmed, to respond without impulsivity, and to act with strategic clarity. This kind of detachment is a refined psychological skill. It starts with self-awareness. The ability to recognize when your emotions are steering your decisions. Anxiety, fear of rejection, or desire for approval can distort perception and force you into reactive patterns. Power players train themselves to pause, reflect, and separate personal feelings from the objective realities of the situation. This mental discipline transforms social interactions from emotional minefields into arenas for tactical maneuvering. You learn to engage without attachment, to form alliances without dependency, and to communicate without vulnerability. The strategic mindset is another cornerstone of power psychology. It requires viewing every interaction as a move in a larger game, where long-term goals eclipse short-term gratification. This mindset demands patience, calculation, and foresight. It means analyzing the motives behind others' words and actions, anticipating their moves, and preparing counter-strategies. Importantly, it also means being unpredictable and maintaining a guarded persona. By keeping others unsure of your true intentions, you maintain control of the narrative and create psychological leverage. Controlling your emotions also extends to managing how others perceive you. The way you present yourself, your expressions, tone, and body language can influence the power dynamics in subtle yet profound ways. A calm, composed demeanor signals confidence and control, while visible agitation invites exploitation. Machiavellian figures know that power often resides not just in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. Silence, measured responses, and ambiguous signals all serve as tools to keep opponents off balance. Mastery of this psychological theater amplifies your influence and safeguards your position. Importantly, this mastery doesn't require sacrificing authenticity. Rather, it demands a deeper understanding of self and others. When you accept that no one is truly your friend in the world of power, you are freed from illusions and emotional entrapment. You gain the freedom to act with purpose, to choose your battles, and to build alliances based on clear-eyed realism rather than wishful thinking. In this way, detachment and strategic thinking are not signs of weakness or loneliness. They are marks of mental toughness, resilience, and true power. Mastering the dirty game of power comes with a heavy psychological price. When you accept that no one is truly your friend and that relationships are largely strategic, you step into a world often defined by loneliness, mistrust, and constant vigilance. The emotional toll of this reality is undeniable. Suspicion can breed paranoia, detachment can feel like isolation, and the constant effort to maintain control drains mental energy. Yet, understanding and preparing for these costs is essential for long-term survival in any power dynamic. The psychology of power reveals that the price is not merely external, loss of alliances, reputation, or resources, but deeply internal. Those who play this game risk eroding their ability to trust, which can corrode their social support and increase vulnerability to burnout. This makes resilience and self-awareness indispensable psychological tools. Resilience allows you to recover from betrayals, setbacks, and moments of isolation without losing your strategic focus. Self-awareness helps you recognize when emotional exhaustion is setting in, so you can recalibrate and avoid destructive patterns. Another vital psychological resource is cultivating an internal locus of control. The belief that you can influence outcomes through your actions rather than being a victim of circumstance or the whims of others. This mindset empowers you to act decisively, to take responsibility for your position, and to maintain agency even in the most hostile environments. It also shields against the destructive effects of external betrayal and uncertainty. When you understand that power ultimately begins with controlling your own mind and responses, the chaos of social manipulation loses much of its potency. Loneliness and mistrust do not have to mean weakness. In fact, they can become sources of strength when balanced with self-compassion and realistic expectations. Power players learn to derive satisfaction and validation from within, rather than seeking it externally through unreliable friendships or alliances. This internal grounding creates a stable psychological foundation that supports sustainable influence and control. It frees you from the emotional whiplash of relying on others who, by nature, act primarily in their own interest. In embracing the unvarnished truth that no one is your friend, you shed illusions and adopt clarity. This clarity is power in its purest form, unfiltered by hope or sentiment, grounded in reality, and driven by self-mastery. Machiavelli's lesson is harsh but liberating. Understanding the psychological realities of trust, deception, detachment, and resilience equips you to navigate the dirty game of power not as a naive participant, but as a calculated, unshakable force. The ultimate victory lies not in winning others' loyalty, but in mastering your own mind, actions, and destiny.